So folks, in this video, we're going to talk about the rotating cards that you'll miss and the ones that you won't. In other words, kind of your most loved and hated cards from Year of the Griffin. But first, perfect timing, this teaser just came out and I wanted to squeeze it into this video because it wasn't going to be worth its own full video. I think this is the teaser for the next Hearthstone expansion, perhaps being announced tomorrow. So here we go, 15 seconds. Their music made them famous. Their battle made them legendary. Tomorrow. And something. That's it. So their music made them famous. This sounds like, as somebody put here, maybe an ETC expansion of some kind, music themed expansion. I don't know. We're going to find out tomorrow. I think this is the typical reveal schedule for the expansion. So I wanted to get this in and get your thoughts on this before we move into the video proper and we talk about the rotating cards you're gonna miss once this expansion arrives in probably the next 3-4 weeks. So yeah, let's kick it off with the cards that you won't miss, or as I like to interpret it, the cards you hated the most from the Year of the Griffin. And at the number 5 spot here, we have Lightforged Cariel. And I think this one shows up because of all of our aggro players out there. You want to smork, you want to go face, you want to kill the opponent, and then they play Cariel, and that becomes twice as hard as it was before, thanks to the immovable object and her damage reduction. And I gotta say, I always loved Cariel. I really liked that. Getting down this wall that basically says, okay, do your best to kill me. If you got some weapon removal, maybe it's not going to be too bad, but otherwise it's going to really extend this game. And you've got this kind of infinite value piece with the ability to attack every turn. And you've got a hero power that gives you a ton of extra stats thanks to the hand buff. So it's just this like grindy win condition all in one. And I like those grindy long-term win conditions that really extend games. Let me play it out for greed and value. Whereas a lot of win conditions in Hearthstone are all about trying to end the game as quickly as possible. Some sort of lethal push, some sort of actual alternate win condition, just crazy damage. This is not like that. This shifts the focus. So I don't hate Cariel at all. I actually loved this card. That said, we've got some thoughts here from some of you. Cariel was such an unfun checkmate scenario. I was so close to killing the opponent, and then they drop the hero. I'm okay with that being a checkmate scenario against aggro decks. There's all kinds of things that just win the game instantly. This does it in a different, unique kind of spin. So not to discount those who hate Cariel, but I don't vibe with this one. I never concede a match unless real life happens. So the slow walk to defeat was felt in full each time Cariel was played. Yes, it was indeed, and I was the one enjoying it. Enjoying the suffering of aggro players. But listen, I'm giving my take on this. I'm kind of countering these takes a little bit, but it's fair, right? If you're somebody in particular who values short games in Hearthstone, you want to be able to hop on, grind out some 3 or 4 games in a short period, or maybe just have time for one short game on the bus ride or on the toilet or whatever it is, then Cariel definitely goes counter to that. And I think Blizzard in general, it seems like they want some shorter games in Hearthstone. It seems like the play times are a bit long for the modern phone market, and then you got like Marvel Snap coming in with really fixed length games, and that seems to create some pressure there too. So I don't know that we're going to see cards like Cariel much in the future that do tend to grind out games and extend them quite the same way. This also got nerfed, of course, from 7 to 8 because that was just feeling a little bit too early for this sort of play. Still a solid fun card at 8 though. So, I don't know, this might be, I have a worry this is going to be one of the kind of last of its kind of these sorts of cards. I've been savoring this. I've really enjoyed Cariel's time in Standard. Absolutely a card I'm going to miss, not one I'm not going to miss. But I guess aggro players, smorkers, toilet users alike aren't quite as big of fans as Cariel, enough that she squeezed into the top 5 here on the list. So the card in the number 4 spot that people aren't going to miss is Defend the Dwarven District. And I think in general, quest lines have been one of the most talked about, most commonly cited as hated cards I can ever remember in Hearthstone. Kibler has really championed this cause in particular from the content creator side, but a lot of opinions out there from the player base as well. And I agree. I actually do second all of those quest lines. It felt like they just gave you too much consistency, putting a guaranteed win condition in your hand on turn 1, and then the game kind of plays out in very similar fashion, always trying to achieve said win condition. And in particular, with Hunter here, it felt like they were just kind of delete your thing, delete your thing, delete your thing, and then delete your face. And that was a really frustrating play pattern because it felt like you couldn't really do much to interact with this one or stop it, which, as you can see here from one of the comments, somebody wrote solitaire. That's all they put for defend the Dwarven District. And I think a lot of the quest lines felt that way. Like, you just couldn't really do much to disrupt this. You kind of just knew what your fate was going to be from turn 1, and that really felt hopeless. Someone else wrote, just made my eyes roll every time I saw it because I either had a binary, your deck will counter it, or you are straight up dead. And that sense of hopelessness, you are straight up dead, can be really frustrating. And sometimes just trying to rely on like a Mutanus or something to eat their quest reward is like, come on, this never actually works very well. It's a possibility, but most of the time you're just dead. And that's really frustrating, and that's why cards like Defend the Dwarven District show up on this list. And a lot of the other quest lines did as well. Basically, any of them that were played, this just happened to be the one at the top of the list and therefore cracked into the top 5. Kind of bottom 5, depending on how you think about it. But the 5 most commonly cited as cards you won't miss. So moving on to number 3 here, this one kind of surprised me, but once I saw it, I was like, oh, yeah, obviously this makes a ton of sense. Rune of the Archmage, the RNG of this one, the chaos, is what really seemed to strike a negative chord with people. This person wrote, I can handle a 0-mana Pyroblast to my face. I can't handle a 0-mana Pyroblast that is with its pals Blizzard, Objection, and Wildfire. And really they're just saying, hey, look, they're getting so much out of this, and when it goes well, when they actually get useful cards out of the Rune of the Archmage, it is just so absurdly swingy. They're getting 10 mana worth of stuff, and then this bonus Pyroblast for free, right? It's just too much when things go really well. So yes, it can be inconsistent, and yes, that can balance it in a way, but it still feels really bad when you get hit by the crazy side of that inconsistency. Somebody else is going to get the nice side of the inconsistency, which this person wrote, my Rune of the Archmage, 2 Iceblood Towers. That's of course the garbage inconsistency. Opponent's Rune of the Archmage clears the board, summons 2 Deathwings, and deals 10 face damage. I don't know how they're getting all that done, but it's not impossible, I guess. And that kind of feast or famine feel is kind of frustrating when playing it, and also when playing against it. It creates these crazy high spikes and these crazy low lows that can both feel like even victories are unearned, and then defeats feel really, really lousy as well from both sides of the equation. So when you've got a card with this much chaos, I kind of like it. I like big chaos, big crazy RNG cards like this because they're fun as a content creator, right? We get fun moments and fun videos out of these, so I can kind of tolerate some of those bad experiences. But for so many other people who aren't trying to get a video out of it, of course, it just feels like a ripoff most of the time. And I certainly see why people are so frustrated by this card, particularly happening turn and turn and turn again with the way Big Spell Mage is structured nowadays, with parrots and such. So yeah, I was kind of caught me off guard to see this one, but instantly made sense why it's here. So next up here is Guff, the hero card, and this one did not surprise me. I hear so many complaints about Guff on YouTube. I think the very visible imbalance between your opponent having way more mana than you, that feels really, really frustrating to play against for a lot of people. And yes, of course, they had to make some sacrifices to get there, et cetera, et cetera. There have been moments where that's perfectly balanced, but still something that people pick out as an absolute frustration because, they're playing with 15 mana and you've got 7. That feels bad. As somebody put it, Guff is cheating. And it does feel that way from time to time. Someone else wrote, me still no like Guff. He play more and bigger things. Me want to play cards too, but me no like Mr. Guff. And we've also got 20 mana turn 7 go burr. I don't know about 20 mana on turn 7. I haven't quite seen it that bad, but the sentiment is understood indeed. And, you know, listen, I really, really liked Guff when Guff wasn't a great card. There was something so fun about having all this extra mana to play big and dumb and stupid stuff. But as soon as Guff became a card that started enabling actual real win conditions and gave opponents crazy combos, that's where I think Guff turned the corner into a dangerous card and a really frustrating card. And that's when we saw all the ire, which is funny because Guff as a character, I think, is universally beloved. People really, really like the feel and the voice actor and the attitude of Guff. All of that's great. They just hate the play pattern because of that natural imbalance. So you know, there's some rumors, some thoughts that Guff might be sticking around in the core set because we got that Druid card that demands 11 mana. I don't really believe that. I think there'll be some other mechanism instead, as opposed to Guff. It'd be kind of weird to toss this in the core set. So I don't think you have to worry about Guff actually not rotating. I think he will indeed. And it sounds like for a lot of people, that's going to be a relief. So on to our number one card. It's Bran Bronzebeard, and boy, this one gets talked about a lot. I love this. I loved him back then. I hate him now. It's funny how things turn out. I think we've all heard that from some exes along the way. Somebody else wrote, you know why. And yeah, Bran has been a crazy enabler for so many of the like busted Battlecry cards we've seen throughout the last year in the core set. Now, here's the thing, right? We actually don't know 100% that Bran is rotating. We did get word from a Blizzard developer that Bran had his time, which sounded like a 99% confirmation that Bran was going to rotate, but technically could be a card that kind of hangs around in the core set if they changed that perspective at all. But most of the time, we're going to believe Bran is rotating back out of core. And it sounds like that's going to be good. I think that really will open up a lot of design space, because anytime you've got things doubling, that can really get scary quite fast, especially with the various mana cheat cards available. Things like Thaddeus are sticking around, right? Bran might just continue to offer these crazy doubling effects, and that could really limit what other battle cries are able to actually do in the future. So I am relieved that Bran is rotating. He's a card I've also enjoyed a ton. I've also loved him throughout various eras. I still like using him for crazy shenanigans, you know, using him to buff Lorthamar stuff and get crazy Lorthamar buffs. That's really fun. But, you know, when he was playing into, you know, Astalors and Denathriuses and stuff, that was a little less fun. So I understand the need for a card like Bran to head back into the world of Wild and leave us be in Standard, at least for a little while, and hopefully give us some really cool battle cries in exchange. So this was the number one card, cited as the card you guys aren't gonna miss when it rotates out of Standard format, and maybe I agree. So next up, let's talk about the cards you will miss. These are the cards you guys loved, and spoiler alert, there's a few repeats on this list. Clearly some divisive cards. For instance, Lightforged Cariel taking the exact same spot. She's number 5 on both the hated and loved rotating card lists, because a lot of you were like me, and you love Cariel because she extends games and shuts down aggro decks, like I talked about earlier. There's two kinds of players, those who love Cariel and those who don't, and they were equally represented on both sides of this poll, which is really, really funny. This person wrote, I will miss you, Queen. Second that. Someone else wrote, although sometimes frustrating to play against, it's a really cool, unique control tool. In Wink Edition, she's a strong card, but still counterable with weapon removal. And yeah, I think that's exactly right. That's how I feel about it too. You know, this card was always sort of, as it got more and more popular, it was easier and easier to tech in a weapon removal to answer it. And, you know, there's kind of a self-balancing aspect that happens there, where it finds a level where it shows up sometimes, but not too often, because sometimes it's a little bit too useless if your opponent is running all those tech removals. And I think particularly having a tradable weapon removal with the Rustrod Viper in the same rotation year was really nice, because that tradable aspect makes tech cards like that feel a lot better to run. So really good that was already in the game waiting once Lightforged Cariel was actually released. And yeah, this actually is probably top 2 or 3 for me, but happy to see it recognized on the list all the same. Now, this one completely stunned me. I did not expect to see Jace Darkweaver here in the number 4 spot. Not that anything's wrong with Jace. I mean, it's not my favorite card personally, but I just didn't think there were a lot of Demon Hunter players who watched my videos. Whenever I put out Demon Hunter videos, you guys don't watch, you don't care. You don't seem to like the Demon Hunter playstyle all that much, but you guys showed up big time in the poll here with Jace Darkweaver showing up at number 4. This person wrote, Jace Darkweaver, big strong man. He make things go boom and look cool. I like this. Tavis is short and dumb and makes things go boom and look dumb. Can't help but feel like I'm the Tavish in this scenario. Although I'm not short. Some people think so. I'm actually rather tall. The dumb part, it's up for debate. Somebody else wrote, biased DH player answer, but Jace is very cool, especially the art, entrance animation, and even voice line. And I wanted to include that take because I think that's a lot of it sometimes when it comes to these cards is just the feel, regardless of their mechanics or effects or their impact on the game. Sometimes you just identify with the cards like colors or art or the voice effect or the quote line. It rings out to you for some reason. And I think a lot of the times people get attached to cards for that. And like Guff, for instance, is a good example. The Guff is so lovable. I think a lot of people like Guff almost independent of any effect he might have on the game. So Jace would not be anywhere close to my list. I'm actually not in love with Jace. I think he had kind of too powerful of an effect. Felt really good at different times of the meta, a little too good sometimes, and game ending sometimes. So this gave me kind of Shutterwalk flashbacks in a weird way that I didn't enjoy. So this wouldn't be anywhere. This is maybe one of my more hated cards, if anything, but a lot of you guys like Jace, and that was totally surprising. So this one's cool. Mutanus the Devourer at the number 3 spot. This person wrote, I like eating. Can't disagree with you there. He was the card that saved me against quest lines. I don't forget that. I love that shout out here. Mutanus being able to answer the quest line rewards with all the various 5 mana 7/7s. And I certainly enjoyed a few of those moments myself. And somebody else wrote, Mutanus genuinely feels like a well-balanced card. And I think that's one of the reasons I really like Mutanus is he really hit a good spot on balance. Like, certainly got played a ton, but his cost is pretty prohibitive at 7. He ultimately was just like a body on board after the eat. So sometimes if he whiffed, it was like you got some stats, but not anything crazy. You didn't feel like he was too big of a swing on board or anything. They didn't give him rush, for instance. Things like that would have made him nuts. And then he had this very naturally balanced effect because it didn't always connect. It was still up to RNG. And in fact, your opponent could sometimes control that RNG a little bit by keeping more minions in hand. And sometimes they'd mess up and only have 1 minion in hand. So there was this kind of skill rewarding and natural balancing effect with Mutanus because of his actual randomness, all of which I think made this card feel good. Like sometimes, yeah, it's frustrating to get your stuff Mutanus, but you recognize the risks, you understood it going in, and you could try your best to mitigate it. So very often you could limit it. Unlike Theatar, for instance, which was way cheaper, they had way better chances to hit the cards that they wanted to because they got to pick it. So even if they didn't get the exact thing they wanted, they still often took something very good. And yeah, you got a card back, but it was always garbage you didn't care about anyway. So Mutanus was like a much healthier, more interesting version for me of that kind of disruption card than something like Theatar was later on. And of course, Theatar went from 4 to 6 mana, if you recall, pushing him closer to that Mutanus cost overall. So Mutanus was kind of a home run design as far as I'm concerned. Also a mini set legendary that actually got played, which is not always super common. There's usually one good one, and Mutanus was the good one for Forged in the Barrens. So this card has been a really welcome sight as far as I'm concerned in standard format for a while, and I too will miss him. So the number 2 spot here belongs to Seek Guidance. And I gotta say, this doesn't shock me too much because I think there is an entire cohort of Hearthstone players who are Quest Priest players, and that's just what they play, and they don't play anything else. And regardless of how good the deck is, it's often wavering between like tier 2 and tier 4. They just like playing Quest Priest, and they're gonna play Quest Priest no matter what you do. And I think they all voted for Quest Priest. It could be really sad because that's their deck rotating out of standard format. This person wrote, hate on me all you want, but Quest Priest is so rewarding, and I love the gameplay and decisions involved in ensuring survival and turning the quarter. My favorite quest ever is Seek Guidance. I love Priest and control decks despite most people hating it. I love that both of these people were consciously aware of being hated on for picking this, but a lot of you picked this. It was number 2, which is kind of crazy. And listen, I don't hate Quest Priest players. I don't even really hate the Priest Quest. I actually think, as far as alternate win conditions are concerned, this is probably one of the healthier ones that we've had because it has a lot of visibility. Your opponent knows exactly how far along you are. They have a pretty good idea of how quickly this quest reward might come. There's plenty of opportunities for disruption, both through the Xyrella in hand and sometimes stealing the shard itself. So, you know, I always felt like this was kind of a healthy one, and it forced the priest to make predictable plays, sometimes to play things suboptimally just to get the quest done, even if they weren't ideal on curve, for instance. So I don't hate the quest for quest priest at all. I think it's a totally fair, pretty slow alternate win condition that gives plenty of time to go under it and interact with it. So it wasn't one I identified with a lot personally. I didn't love playing Quest Priest all that often, but I am absolutely fine with you guys loving it and supporting it and missing it, which was common enough to make it a number 2. And then finally, the number 1 card you guys are going to miss most. It's Goof. Somebody wrote Goof mostly for the character. And listen, that was not a typo that they wrote Goof, because they wrote it in both the card name and in the explanation for the card. They just think it's spelled Goof. So we're going to call him Goof this entire time. But Goof was number 2 on the most hated, and he's number 2 here on the most missed as well. So, or number 1 on the most missed, excuse me. So really, really popular card here in both cases, nearly topping both of these lists. And I actually do understand, I think it's really, really fun to play with 20 mana. And it can feel very, very powerful to play with 20 mana. And much like it can feel unfair and unbalanced when you're playing against Guff, when you're playing him, it can feel awesome to be big and all powerful and just hoarding your mana over your opponent. That's rewarding. You want to feel powerful in games, in competitive PvP games. So I understand why so many people really do identify with that Guff imbalance and hate it on the other side as well, of course. This is Call Me Crazy, but I love getting 20 mana and playing Big Druid. Guff is a big oaf that is so sweet and innocent looking until he allows you to kill your opponent on turn 7. So again, we're seeing a little bit of identification with the character here, and that's true. Everybody loves Guff. It feels like he's so silly and goofy and fun and just kind-hearted. That's a vibe I want to display a little bit in my life as well. I kind of want to be like Guff. So yes, I recognize how frustrating he is, but I get it. I like Guff too. I like playing for 20 mana, especially with goofy stuff, meme stuff, fun stuff. So I actually do think I'm gonna miss Goof, excuse me, not Guff, Goof. I forgot his name is Goof. I'm gonna miss Goof a fair bit as well, much like many of you. I don't know if he'd be number 1 for me, but Goof would probably show up on my list as well. And there you go, folks. Those are the cards you're not gonna miss and the cards you will miss, both in this video. It's a pretty fun ones to talk about. Curious to hear your thoughts on all of these. Any other things you were surprised didn't show up on this list? And I'm also curious to hear your take on that teaser we got for the upcoming Hearthstone expansion, it looks like. So share all those thoughts and more down in the comments. Thanks much as always for watching, and until next time, game on.